All right, about a decade ago, a study was done by the Barna Group. You know about the Barna Group. They do a lot of cultural Christianity where they're looking at what's happening in our culture and what's affecting Christianity. Understand that they're evangelicals. They'll probably be the closest in the denominational world that we would have, because they, for the most part, still believe the Bible is the Word of God. They practice things that, of course, we would not agree with, but nonetheless, they're as close as you can get in that kind of study. Because we are all independent congregations, I don't know how you would gauge among conservative churches of Christ what's happening with our young people. But we mirror many times the culture. We follow it. And I noticed that 13 years I preached in College Station. We had 120 college kids. That's how many college kids we had inside the congregation. It was like having a congregation inside a congregation, because they have unique, just as you do, unique things that affect young people. So David Kinnaman, who's the president of the Barna Group, wrote a book called You Lost Me. Have any of you read this? Are you familiar with it? It now has been followed up by, he calls it something faith to the exiles, the ones who have left congregations, that is organized religion, as we would say, and haven't come back. And he talks about that. But this is about why young people left. There's a number of others, if you're familiar with Ken Ham, who does a lot of work. You know, if y'all been to see the Ark in Kentucky, the physical Ark, Ken Ham's the one behind that as far as leading the organization. I've heard him speak on occasions about especially evolution. But Already Gone, Why Your Kids Will Quit Church and What You Can Do to Stop It, Ready to Return. And again, these are books I picked up there when we went to see the Ark. But we're basing our study this morning, and I passed out to you the questionnaire. So as I go along this morning in this first lesson, I want you to do the following. So first of all, don't put your name on it, because we're going to collect this up. And I want to give it to the shepherds here and to the preachers after we're done to just see what you're saying. And please be very honest on this. So what I wrote at the top is, please check the box if you feel any of these reasons for you lost me. I took this entirely out of that book. Applies to you. Not that you are leaving the Lord, but that you've thought similar thoughts or doubts, and their reason for leaving resonates with you. So don't sign your name to this sheet, okay? Please do not do that. I want you to feel like you can answer honestly, because many times that's what we try to get and we fail to get. So don't look on your neighbor. Make them feel, like I can't answer this honestly because somebody's next to me. We just want you to do that, because you're going to help your shepherds if we get to the end of this and things may surprise them about what you're going through. So circle anything that they say. I've listed what they've said underneath the main points that you also have felt is true. And it's the only way those of us who are older in the faith can understand where you are and hopefully help you answer your doubts about your faith. So as we think about this together this morning, you work through this as we're talking about it. All right, here's the first thing that he put up, and this I got recently out of the second book. And you'll notice that in 2011, 59% of the kids in these evangelical groups drop out. You realize how many that is? You're saying 3 out of every 5. If we were to number you off, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Alex just left, Noah just left. No. You know it's not a particular person. We're dealing with statistics, but that's appalling. That's eye-opening. It's like they're having that many kids leave and not come back. Now, I'm not saying that they never come back, but the percentage of the ones that come back is very, very limited. Now, jump to 8 years later, the study was redone. While it didn't increase a great deal, it still increased. And now 64% do not come back. What do you think 2025 would look like? post-COVID, post a lot of things that have happened. We in churches of Christ that are conservative, I think, mirror the culture later. What I found with working with the college kids where I was, with a major university that's not, like Florida College where you're having your faith built and all that, what they depended on, which is the Lord's way, is the congregation. They depended on us. They depended on me and on the elders and on us helping them through whatever they were going through, because even if you go to Florida College, you're going to go out in the real world in about 3 or 4 years. You're still going to face the same thing anybody faces who goes to a university that's not of FC's bent in things. And you have to decide. You've got to decide if I'm going to follow God. And what I found was that we were beginning to mirror what had happened in liberal churches. I did some study work at Abilene a number of years ago, and what one of the professors said to me is that we're losing our young people to denominations. They're going to Lutherans, they're going to the Methodists, they're going to the Baptists, they're going to churches that have no affiliation, and that's the huge push now, who have no affiliation with what is called mainline congregations, denominations. And so what he told me in the early 90s when I was doing work began to be apparent to me 20 and 25 years later, that we were starting to see that. Kids that I could tell you, we kept all the directories, and I could point you kids that is either while they were in college or as soon as they got out of college, they are among these groups that have no affiliation with any denomination, but they're not among churches of Christ. They don't believe that baptism is necessary salvation. They're fine with singing the instruments of music and everything that they do with their money out of the treasury. It was shocking to think about the percentages. Even if they're a lot smaller than this, it's still what happens. All right, these are the main reasons in the book, and I'll leave it up here for anybody that wants to come look, and if you're interested in getting yourself, it's still readily available. But this is the first reason. So churches seem overprotective. So this is what they said underneath that. 18%, or 1 out of 5, the church I attend is too concerned that movies, music, and video games are harmful. 25%, B, Christians demonize everything outside of the church. So what they were doing is just listing the main comments. So under that idea that you feel like maybe that the local church that you attend is like way more worried about these things than you think they should be. So if you have anything you want to write on there, you write something, add to it. If that resonates with you, then just circle the percentage or circle the letter A. Just in some way indicate that yeah, I feel that too. I think that too. We're just asking you to be honest, because that's going to help your shepherds in this church. And it's going to help me as I look at it. I don't know names, we don't know anybody. We just want you to feel like you can answer honestly. All right, the second major thing that they found was teens and 20s, that age group, their experience of Christianity is shallow. Now that's not, okay, understand this. He's not saying y'all are shallow. He's saying your experience of Christianity is shallow. I would think that would probably be much more so with the evangelical denominational kind of groups, because notice what they answered. 31% said church is boring. Well, I have a feeling that may resonate with some of you. 24% said faith is not relevant to my career or interest. The same percentage said the Bible is not taught clearly or often enough. That's not even going to... I know the two guys that preach here, and I know what this church stands for and the elders. You know that's not even going to probably where you come from. That's something we don't even share in common. I mean, do you ever get people that attend that are amazed that we study the Bible? I mean, they'll go, you know what we like about this church is y'all study the Bible. We're just always shocked, because it's like, well, what are we supposed to do? Because we're thinking that's first and foremost. All right, so I'm sure that one's not going to resonate. 20%, God seems missing from my experience of church. All right? Again, if you think of something else, not that you're shallow, it's the idea that your experience is shallow. That is, the church is not doing what it ought to do. All right, number 3, churches come across as antagonistic to science, and mostly this is going to relate to because it has captured the entire culture. The idea that Darwinian evolution is truth, that's truth, and that anybody that would believe that we didn't evolve from lower organisms of life is like, they just think that's stupid. How could you believe something that's so anti-scientific, right? And it's not anti-scientific. It's anti-philosophy, a belief system that has no supporting evidence, and we're going to talk about that a little bit this morning. 35% Christians are too confident that they know all the answers. 29% of these that were done, and this, of course, Barna does very scientific, types of research, okay, so that they give you the percentage of variation and those types of things. 29% churches are out of step with the scientific world we live in. 25% said Christianity is anti-science. And 23%, they're turned off by the creation versus evolution debate. Thought it was interesting that those percentages are really high, among the numbers that they looked at. All right, the fourth thing they found out, the church that you attend, your view of sexuality is judgmental. You grow up in an environment where your ability to find, for instance, especially guys, to find pornography online is just unbelievable, unprecedented from when I grew up, when Warren grew up, and all of us that are our age had to go and find stuff like that at a convenience store behind the counter. You had to buy it that way. Or you had a buddy that had done that, and you access it. Where your phone becomes instantly something that can access that. And how many marriages right now? Elders, if you're not struggling with it yet here, you will. And that is that ladies are saying that if their husbands have viewed pornography, in interactive pornography, that gives them the right to put them away and remarry. They're redefining the word pornea. And if you're not facing that yet, I guarantee you somebody's going to show up. Somebody's going to happen. We need to be ready to answer it. Because I know 2 cases right now that I'm dealing with, not where I am, but dealing with it because I performed their marriage. And they're claiming that they have the right to remarry based upon that kind of thing. And so pornography is just a curse beyond anything that we could possibly imagine. And it's been made possible because of the unfettered way that you can access that sort of thing. And so we're going to talk about that in the next lesson. The exclusive nature of Christianity. 29% said churches are afraid of the beliefs of other faiths. 29% said they're forced to choose between my faith and my friends. We're going to talk about the last lesson, about choosing right friends, because I think that we need to especially address that. And the church is like a country club, they said, only for the insiders. And the last one that they found that they're categorizing is unfriendly to those who doubt. 36% said, I don't feel able to ask my most pressing life questions in church. 23% said they have significant intellectual doubts about their faith. And 18% said their faith does not help with depression or other emotional problems. That's an area where I think there are a number of people that are trying to help in that. That's something that's fairly new among brethren, but it's something I think essential. And there are guys that are doing really good work in that area. They have both the credentials in that field, but they're very faith-based. They're very Bible-based, and they're doing great work in that area. The one that I think is the both of those, it's significant intellectual doubts, and you don't feel able to ask your question. I believe that you probably have doubts about Christianity. We're going to try to talk about some of that tomorrow morning. Why should you believe the Bible is the Word of God? And then we're going to talk about the resurrection of Jesus Christ. Because I want to tell you, those are the core. Those are the core. If you can get that settled in your mind, then you're going to settle these other questions, because you're going to believe that not only is Jesus the Lord who came back from the dead, therefore he's Lord of my life. And then if you have confidence that the Bible, this ancient book, is indeed inspired by God, we can't answer all the questions about it being passed down and transmitted in history. That's a whole separate kind of study. But the confidence that the original autographs, the ones that were penned by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are indeed accurate, then you're a long way ahead. You're a long way ahead of solidifying your faith and answering those questions. All right, do y'all need any more time, or you pretty well done with answering that? If you are, just pass them. If you're still writing, I don't want to rush you. Anybody still writing, answering? This is yes, and this is no. Everybody ready? All right, pass them down, and we'll pick them up. Thanks for being helpful, and I know your shepherds will benefit from this. I want to look at them first, but I'm going to hand them off to either Warren or one of the shepherds. And then the parents, y'all have them, all right? You've got one, and so you'll have a chance to maybe have conversation out of it if your kids are opening to do that. Okay, let's think about then the lesson this morning is going to be based on this idea, first of all, what I call why people leave, young people leave, is because they do not know why Jesus is Lord. Okay, the lesson I'm going to do on his resurrection is crucial. If that's true, as Apostle Paul says, then everything's true. But if it's not, then let's eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. I mean, that's how critical it is. And so we're going to look at that tomorrow morning. It's going to be our morning sermon lesson. But as we think about this, I want you to think about what the Bible says. Why do kids leave, or young people leave? Because they do not know that Jesus is Lord. Well, at the end of the day, we're talking about authority. We're talking about the one who has the right, all right, the right to rule in your life. Because just like any other young person, you're gonna say to them, well, why should I follow? The Bible tells me to flee sexual temptation. It tells me not to commit sexual immorality or fornication. It tells me that when you're married for life. I mean, why should I live my life that way? Because I'm going to tell you, when you enter college, and you know it already, in high school you encounter it all the time. I mean, guys and girls are sleeping together. They don't have any qualms about that. And I'm going to tell you what the study found among evangelicals is the sexual immorality that occurs among the evangelical young people mirrors the world. It's almost identical. The percentages are almost the same. And I'm not so old as to forget how that temptation happened with me, and how, may I just be honest with you, I didn't always do what is right. And I did things that were wrong. And if we can be honest with you that we failed, that we committed sexual immorality, maybe it'll help you to understand that we're not out of touch with you. It's been something that every generation has faced, but you face it in a way that just ups it, in intensity, because of the access to pornography, because of how dating works in our society. You realize there once was a time when you wanted to date a girl, you had to go to their house and you sat in the parlor across the breezeway, and mom and the older brothers watched you. That was your date in the 1800s. We didn't put two hormone, laden people in a car and send them away to a drive-in theater. I know that's ancient too. And or send them away on a date, and they're sitting right up next to each other, and then we think nothing's going to happen. We think everything's going to be fine. And the whole idea of how dating occurs is just, I think, anti-biblical. It's not really, I know I'm fighting a losing battle, but I believe I'm fighting a battle that needs to be fought. But that's a whole other subject. We need to understand that what young people are experiencing is the same. So why should I do what Jesus said? And the bottom line is you've got to know He's Lord. You have to be convinced intellectually. And you have to be then convinced emotionally. I mean, the part of us that drives us to do what we know intellectually. So Jesus claims to have the right and the authority. Somebody turn to John chapter 1, or all of you turn there. I'll get one of you to read it. Alex, do you mind reading? Alex, John 1 through 3. All right, and later in verse 14 he says, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. He's talking about Jesus. And Jesus that was known as the Word before time began. In the beginning, this Word existed. And the Word was with God. That means they were facing each other. Pros, the Greek word, means they were looking at each other. That tells you the Father, the Son. There are three persons of the Godhead. And this verse is telling you about two of them. They faced each other. He was looking at him. And the Word was God in His nature. Even though He became flesh and walked among men and forever has changed that nature, because Paul talks about the man Christ Jesus is our mediator. Even now he says that, Paul said. The man Christ Jesus. So he's altered, he's attached our nature to His nature. But He has always been and will always be in His nature God. Then he says, notice what he says, He was in the beginning with God, all things were made through Him. He was the means by which you and I were created. That is, procreated. How He set in order how human beings would come to the earth, but He created Adam and Eve from the dust of the ground and from the rib from Adam's side. All things were made through Him, and without Him was not anything made that was made. You all know what that is? That's a honeybee frame. I'm a former beekeeper. I had an allergic reaction, another story, that I had to get out of it. But I've been mentoring Ken Parker. Do y'all know Ken is into bees? He's always sending me pictures, and I look at his frames and tell him what I think's going on. This is a brood frame. This is a frame of bees. Let me get my pointer out. This is a frame of bees that they are producing brood. Okay, so let me find the pointer. I was told I couldn't use y'all's. Well, I thought it would shine up there. It shines over here, but it doesn't shine up there. All right, so that area in the middle is sealed brood. All right, some of the holes have popped out. At top is honey, because they have to have honey and pollen to feed. And it's just a really, really nice brood that's going to hatch out. Here's what it looks like. You can see the little things that look like rice in the bottom. That's the queen, sticks her abdomen down in there, and she lays an egg, and it's upright for about 3 days. And it falls over and turns into a larva. Those are larvae, so you get a picture of, and they're swimming in what's called royal jelly. Any of y'all ever taken royal jelly at the health food store? Well, they get it out. They make it in their head and put it down in there, and all bees eat it for 3 days. More story about that. This is a side view so you can see. All right, look at that. Look at those shapes. That's what I mostly want you to center in on. What shape is that? Jagger? Hexagon. A hexagon is how many sides? I know this is not a math class, but y'all know Jagger? No, that's an octagon. It's okay. Look, the only wrong answers in here are all the rest of y'all sitting back going, no, that was a really dumb answer. And you're going, no, well, yeah, you weren't brave enough to answer. All right, hexagon is 6 sides. All right, 6 sides. I want you to stop and think about something. We're talking about design. We're talking about the fact that when Jesus made all things, it's just unbelievable. When you open up a hive, you begin to realize that this is a complex society that's going on in there. There are so many things happening. But I just want to focus on this for a reason. Most bees live their life solitarily. There are very few bees that all work together. Bumblebees, honeybees, maybe a few others. But most of them live solitary lives. In the Darwinian evolutionary theory, they would have all started out that way. But at some point, they decided to work together and just comprehend this. And in working together, they decide to build their hive based on hexagons. Because I don't care what, there are different strains of honeybees all throughout the world. There's a Russian bee that we needed to fight and combat a mite problem that was introduced in America, and now it's all over the world. But there's different strains of honeybees. It doesn't matter if they are given a frame that already has it stamped out. If you give them nothing, they're going to build hexagons. They build hexagons in Russia. They build hexagons in Japan. They build hexagons in the United States. We didn't have honeybees here. They're not indigenous. Did you know the Pilgrims brought 3 honeybee hives with them aboard? I thought that was really fascinating about them breaking out while they're all aboard the ship. And how do you escape? Why a hexagon? A lady in math told me that it's called tessellation. And that's just a fancy way of saying that it's the one shape that can occupy the most space on a plane. Think about it this way. If the bees got together and they're having the meeting about deciding whether or not we're going to do hexagons or circles or pentagons, if we did circles, and put your circle right below mine. No, get those fingers down, don't need those. All right, now get your other circle over. All right, well, over here, I mean. Yeah. Do y'all, if we can get together, do y'all see you have this weird triangle missing space? And you'd have that. And you'd be losing. In other words, the numbers of bees are going to go down because you don't have room. The hexagon is the only shape that occupies the most space on a plane. And that gives you the most number of bees that you can produce. The other thing about it is 3 sides of one are what? They're the sides of the other ones. So it becomes the strongest structure that can be built. Guess who borrowed that? You ever looked at sound systems? You ever looked at speakers on your sound system? They're hexagons. I look down in the car, and behind that panel that covers it, you can see the hexagon thing, because there's something about sound that does. In the space field and everything, if they're building something and they need that's the strongest structure that can be built. You know what the other thing is? It uses the least amount of materials that are needed. Now, can you imagine a bunch of bees getting together and saying, well, I vote for circles, and I vote for triangles, and I vote for, and every bee, it's here. And they build it as a hexagon. Where did that come from? It's the idea of design, that there is an ultimate God, an ultimate power that designed these things. I won't have time to go into this, but I will tell you, if you're a family, I bought it the other day. I couldn't find my DVD. Yes, I still use DVDs, only because I've had so many of them. But you can buy it online. I bought it off of Prime. And it's called The Privileged Planet. There's a man on there, Guillermo Gonzalez, who is an astrobiologist, who the whole idea is that once they discovered there are just unbelievable numbers of galaxies out there and unbelievable numbers of stars that are like our sun, certain kind of dwarf star, that there has to be, under their estimation, just billions of planets, or at least millions of planets, that are able to support life like ours, able to create it under the Darwinian theory. And you know what they have found out? That not only had you to answer that probability, but you had to answer the factors that are necessary to having a planet that can support life like ours. For instance, it has to be in what they call the Goldilocks zone. You know what the Goldilocks zone is? What was Goldilocks? Remember that story? Yeah, it had to be not too hot and not too cold. Had to be just right. Because there's only a zone. If we were 5% closer to the sun, the Earth, we would reach 900 degrees like Venus, and everything would just not be alive. And if we were 23%, or something like that, 4%, further away, then we would have perpetual winter on one side of the planet. We are exactly where we need to be in what's called the Goldilocks zone. The other thing that they found was that you have to have water. You have to have liquid water. Mars has water, but because they have no tectonic and system plates and they have no atmosphere like our atmosphere, again, all of these are essential. Their water all goes and freezes at the top of the planet and in other places. You have to have liquid water that transports nutrients, that regulates the temperature of your planet, the fact that it can absorb immense amounts of energy from the sun. And you have to have so much water to the continents to be just right. And they have all of these factors. And if you don't have all of them, it's not just that you have the probability there's enough planets out there to produce it. What they found out was, and here's what they say, is the universe is a life-killing universe. The laws of physics and chemistry, as they believe and say, and I think they're right, have to be the same across the universe if you're going to postulate all of this. And they believe that that's the way it is. It's life-killing. There are not planets that are in that Goldilocks zone. And if they are, they don't have all the other factors. There's like 50 factors that have to be. How does that just happen? And so the design argument began in about the middle of the 90s. And if you have intellectual doubts about the faith, you need to read Darwin's Black Box. Sometimes Christians write books, and I'm all for that, but we're lightweights most of the time. We don't have their credentials. We're not the PhDs that study in this world. These guys are, and you know what? This guy's not a Christian. This is a Darwinian evolutionist who faced the facts and's honest. And he raises all kinds of problems for Darwinian evolution. If you're going to leave the faith because you believe that one, remember up there it said that science, we're anti-science? Don't do it on the basis of sloppy work. You read this book. Tell you another book you read. I lost my copy. I can't find it. I searched diligently, so now I'm going to have to buy another one. The Rare Earth by Brownlee was his last name. Again, a man who's not a Christian, but who realized these 50 factors are absolutely essential. And so why the earth is, his subtitle is, Why the Earth is a Special Place. Carl Sagan years ago came out with the idea that we're not special. We're just a pale blue dot as Voyager turned around billions of miles in space and took a picture. And we're in that beam of light that comes from the sun. But we are a special planet because God designed it. Okay, that's the end of our first lesson. You need to know why Jesus is Lord, and you have to sometimes look at the evidence that points you to that God said Jesus created all things, and there's good reason to believe that. Once you establish that fact in your mind with the resurrection, then I'm going to listen to what he says, if I believe the Bible is accurate, and that's going to be our other lesson. Are any comments, any questions, anything that's buzzing around in your brain? All right. That's the end of the first one. Thanks.
'97 servant song. Don't make me a servant. your Son, for he was a servant. Please make me one. Make me a servant. Do what you must do to make me a servant. Make me like you. Make me a servant. Take all my pride, for I would be lowly, humble inside, giving to others with all that I do, in love for my brother. Make me like you. Make me a servant, filled by your might, and may all my labors shine with your light. Show me your footsteps and what I should do, for now and forever. Make me like you. Go ahead and be seated.
All right, how many of y'all are members here, or you attend here? Raise your hand, okay. I've always wondered this. Y'all have got two preachers, and Sam and Warren. I love both of them. So you guys that are here, I mean, who's better, Sam or Warren? Sam? Okay, well. No, yeah. Oh, man. Well, I'm sure Sam's good, but I'm going to go with Warren. No, I was just kidding. Yeah, Sam was feeling that way. You went down, worked with two older guys, and they're pretty good guys. It does, and we develop. Yeah, it's what it is. Where I am, I mean, they just love me. I'm the only guy they've got, and we don't have that debate. They don't go, oh well, I like that guy that gets up out of the audience, and no. Anyway, all right. Well, I like them both, and I listen to them occasionally online. All right, when I need a lesson. Okay, so we're going to talk about why sin. This is one of the reasons I think young people leave. Whoop, I forgot to do those. All right. Beware that sin is fun. All right, this passage out of Hebrews about Moses. By faith, Moses, when he became of age, refused to be called the son of Pharaoh's daughter, choosing rather to suffer affliction with the people of God than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. I want you to mark that down, the passing pleasures of sin. Esteeming the reproach of Christ greater riches than the treasures in Egypt, for he looked to the reward. So what does that, sum that up for me, somebody. What does that say Moses based his reason on? How did he choose? What basis? Why did he make the choice? Can you imagine? You're a prince of Egypt. I always find it interesting that Moses said he couldn't talk well. You remember he argued with God about that? Stephen says in Acts 7 that Moses was mighty in words and deeds. I think Moses is not telling us, he's kind of giving himself, but he was apparently better than that. Stephen thought he was mighty in words, and remember he was inspired. But think about that. You're a prince. You have all the wealth. You can do anything you want to do. You're at the top of the food chain, as we say. And he's looking out at all those slaves. Even though they're his people, he looks at all of them thinking, boy, that's the bottom of the rung. I'm having a really great life over here. living and doing whatever I want. I can hunt lions in my chariots with my fellow princes and all those kinds of things they did that you see on their painted on their walls. Or I can go over there and be a part of those slaves. Why did he choose to do that? What does that say? Look at it. What basis did he do it on?
He would rather do what was better than to do.
Yeah, it was better. He's weighing two sides. And even though it looks like they're the sufferers and they're the ones that are being reproached, it was greater riches. What does the last phrase say that I've highlighted? He looked to the reward. He looked at the end of the two things. He's looking down a road and he's saying, that's not going to be a good road, what Egypt's going to do. In fact, Egypt lies in the dust, and all of it has gone away. And Jesus' name will always be, because he is the Lord that we talked about in the first lesson. So what Moses did about sin, because notice that he says, than to enjoy the passing pleasures of sin. Don't let anybody ever tell you that sin isn't fun. The Bible says sin is fun. That's what attracts people. That's why we do it. Because sin, for the most part, is going to be fun to us in the beginning, and it's going to be pleasurable, as that text says. But here's the reality. Do you make an immediate choice, or do you make a postponed choice? Moses was willing to postpone the immediate gratifications of life and all the pleasures that go with that for the postponed reward that he knew was in Jesus. He knew, even the Hebrew author says, of Christ. He knew that the end was better, far better, than if he stuck with Egypt. The book that's up there is titled The Marshmallow Test. How many of y'all know, young people, know about the marshmallow test? All right, one of you. All right, what this guy did back in, I think, the 60s, Walter Miskell, sociologist, went into a school, and I forget exactly the age, but it was more like elementary kids' age, I believe. And what they did is that they took one of these giant marshmallows, the biggies, and they put it on each kid's desk. Now, I don't know, in my day we were easily entertained. I mean, maybe a giant marshmallow doesn't whiz y'all at all. It's just like going, all right, so what, give me a Twix or something else. But in the day and age that he did it, and maybe giant marshmallows are still the thing, I don't know, but it was a big deal, all right? So he sets it on an elementary school desk. What they tell the kids is, you can eat this marshmallow right now, and you'll have all the pleasure from that. I don't know what they went into and how much they talked about that, but anyway, you can eat the marshmallow now, or we're going to leave, and they were gone for a fair amount of time. If you'll wait and don't eat it, Owen, then when we get back, you can have a second big marshmallow. We'll give you 2 big marshmallows. Now you get 2. And so they left. What do y'all think happened? What, Titus? Yeah, a lot of them just, they're squirming around, they're doing whatever elementary school, they're looking at it, they're thinking about it. Some of them didn't even wait. They just, reached out there and grabbed that. That's what your brother Everett would do, right? He'd just reach out there and grab it. All right. So most of them ate it, but there were kids that waited. So what they did then is they followed those kids for the next 30 years of their life. That's kind of creepy. I'm thinking, who signed off on that? All right, but they followed them, and here's what they found out, and that's what the whole book's premise is. The kids that waited were more successful in this life. They ended up with better jobs, more education, more money. They had houses sooner if the other side ever had a house that they owned. Everything about their marriage, everything about their life was better among the marshmallow waiting folks than the ones that had gobbled them up. Because there is a principle there, isn't there, of discipline, of bringing yourself under control, of why the Bible always talks about one of the fruits of the Spirit is self-control from the Spirit Himself, to know that if we'll do that and make the better choice for waiting, the reward is far greater. And that's the principle that you have to know operates in this world. Miskell and his bunch in sociology found it out, but the Bible had been saying it for a long time, hadn't it? All right. Liquor, drugs, and sex, they all look fun. I mean, because they are. I mean, if people drink, those that have drugs, if you engage in sexual immorality, the passing pleasures of sin. Jonathan goes here, and he's not here this morning, so I can tell this story. I never could tell the best stories, you know, if he was a member, but now he's not, I can tell them all. And Jonathan was a little kid. We were going to work, or going to school, I'm sorry, one day, and he just shot this question out. He said, "Dad, did you ever drink?" And he meant alcohol. So I'm driving along, I said, "Well, yeah, Bud, I did." Man, he shot me a glance. He jerked his head and looked at me and he said, "Does Mom know this?" And I said, "Well, yeah, and she married you anyway?" He was always, you know, everything was like, boy, it was like, Bob, it had to be right. And we've laughed about it because you have this high sense of, I'm not supposed to do these things, right? The Bible says something about liquor, but we don't have time to talk about all that. It says something about drugs. But the one we're going to talk about this morning is, of course, the thing that was in that why people leave the church among the evangelicals, and that is that they believe that they are too judgmental about sexual immorality. So let's think about that together. It is fun, the Scripture says. Turn over to Proverbs 23 and verse 31. Adler, where are you? Would you read that? 23. And just, 31. 23, 31.
Do not look at the wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup and goes down smooth.
Okay, he's saying don't look at the wine when it sparkles in the cup, when it swirls around, when it's smooth, when it looks nice. All right, that's sin. All right, whole nother discussion about talking about alcohol, but all I'm saying is what he's saying to us is that it can have that appeal. We're not going to read Proverbs 7 for time's sake, but I would ask you all to do that because Proverbs is really written for you. I mean, it wasn't written for those of us that are older. It was written for probably young princes that were going to lead Israel. But you get the idea from the very beginning. My son, hear the words of your father and listen to the teaching of your mother. And over again, my son, my son, my son, listen to this. Listen. It's written to you. It's written to young people. It's written for you to order your life. Now, I need to get things out of it at this stage of my life, but I'm telling you, at this stage of life, I better have gotten it. It's written for you to see it. So it's warning you. In this case, a mother was warning her son about that. In Proverbs 7, about sexual immorality. And I want you to read some of that. We're going to go to a passage in the New Testament in a minute, 1 Thessalonians, and look at that. I have sat on juries where liquor was involved in car wrecks. And it was a particular jury that I sat on, or at least I was in the process of being picked. I was in that 30 group. I didn't get picked because the defense lawyer said, he kept calling me Reverend, and I kept correcting him and telling him, "Don't call me Reverend, I'm just Mr." I said, "Only God is Reverend," and quoted the passage to him. And then he said, "Well, that's odd." And then he said to me, he said, "You said to the other side that you believe that liquor is a drug." I said, "Yeah, it is a drug." I said, "It's a legal drug, but it's a drug." And I said, and that's why your client is here. Well, I didn't get on the jury. Obviously, he X'd me out really fast. And I went on about my business. But what the story was that day, 3 girls were just going down the road, and this guy left a liquor joint where they served liquor, by the drink bar, got on the road, and in the state of Texas, if you own a bar, you're responsible for your clients. If they leave it drunk and you don't find a way for them to go home, you can be sued. And that's what these girls were doing. They had hit head on. That guy hit them head on. Had all kinds of, he'd already gone the criminal side, already gone to jail, but now they're suing for reclaiming money because they had had multiple surgeries, all of that. Well, everyone in that room was asked the question, do you have anything against liquor? Folks, I listened to people say, a drunk driver came by and killed my brother who changing a flat tire. My ex was a alcoholic, and that's what led to our marriage, and blah, blah, blah. That's what I said to the defense lawyer. I knew he was going to X me anyway, so I thought, well, I might as well preach my sermon. I said, have you listened to any of these people behind me? All these people's lives have been hurt by liquor, and you don't want any of them on the jury. I knew then I was out too. But anyway, the point being is I was listening in real life to what the Proverbs is saying. Here's what the Proverbs says about both the sexual temptation and the liquor. The bottom one's the liquor. Proverbs 23:31. Do not look at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup and goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a serpent and stings like an adder. There's that other side. Judge like Moses did. Decide, are you going to take the immediate gratification, or are you going to look to the end? I'm going to tell you, you're going to find in life that we've legalized a drug that has done unbelievable damage to families, to society, and has killed more people. Do y'all ever go down the road and see the crosses? Do y'all see the crosses that are in the... What happened there? Somebody died. Yeah, there's a lot in Texas. Must have a lot of drunks in Texas, right? There's a lot of them. They're here in Arkansas too. Do you know why they allow that? You know why they have to mow around them and do all that? Do you know why they allow it? Because they want you to think about drinking and driving. Somebody died there. Somebody's son, somebody's daughter, somebody's husband, wife, mother, father died because most of those crosses are there because alcohol was involved in the driving. Now the world works according to reality, and that reality God is telling you. And then in the sexual area, that is what we really want to talk about, Proverbs 7:22-23, when that young guy followed the adulterous wife, all at once he follows her as an ox goes to the slaughter, as a stag is caught fast till an arrow pierces its liver, as a bird rushes into a snare, he does not know that it will cost him his life. And sexual sin, immorality, has consequences too. I've watched, having worked with young people, unwanted pregnancies. I've watched young people make the decision that they would abort an unwanted baby to avoid the consequences. I've watched marriages in my life as a preacher be destroyed because one or both of them were not faithful to their covenant. There's nothing good that comes out of the same reality that works with liquor. The same reality works with sexual immorality. And yet the world preaches to y'all, movies after movies, everything on TV, is they get away with it. You can have sex with who you want to have sex with. You can have it many times you want to have it. There's no consequences. You ever see anybody on the movies suffer because, and yet movie after movie, thing after thing is that they're enjoying it. They're not telling you. Because here's the reality. Satan never tells you the whole story. He never told this young lady that she could get pregnant the first time. Satan never told her that she would be a single mom for 7 years until a really good man that she had reclaimed her life for the Lord would find her and be willing to take her along with her son, who wasn't his, and raise that boy as if he was his. Do you know how fortunate she is? Do you know how blessed she was? Satan never told her that the first family would have nothing to do with her by the boy that got her pregnant unless she agreed to an abortion, which she would not do. You see, Satan never tells you what's going to happen after the fun. And you've got to have the sense of Moses to look and to choose and to weigh and to decide, to wait till you're married. Because here's the reality. If you sleep with somebody before you're married, and if you decide you're going to sleep with a lot of people before you're married, when you marry, every one of those former people are going to be right there. And you can't get them out. And not only are they there, they're there physically. You realize, I know probably a lot of progress has been made in AIDS, but AIDS can pop up many years after the fact because the virus is there. Now, they've done a lot of strides in that, and I don't even keep up with all of that. It may be it's defeatable right now from that standpoint. But there's some things you can't defeat. And you can't defeat the fact that you cheated, and now you're going to feel like, I've got to explain that to the girl that I'm going to marry, that I slept with a bunch of girls before. Or you got to explain it to your husband-to-be, and then wonder if they're going to take you, just like that guy was willing to take that girl. There are always consequences to violating what God says, and they can be big consequences. All right. Let's look at 1 Thessalonians together. And for time's sake, I need to be done here in a little bit. I've got all the passages up there. All right, so you can read the entire passage that's in 1 Thessalonians chapter 4 and beginning at about verse 3. But here are the things I glean from that passage. The first is control your sexual appetites. That's what we've been talking about already. Notice what Paul says. For this is the will of God, your sanctification, that is to make us holy, that you abstain from sexual immorality, that each one of you know how to control his own body in holiness and honor. Do you remember that statement a minute ago from why the kids leave is they believe that the church is too judgmental about sexual matters? Well, the problem with that statement is the Bible is judgmental. There's right and wrong. There's all the consequences, the things we've talked about. What God's trying to do for you and for me is to save us from ourselves. He's trying to save us from the reality that we can hurt ourselves and we can hurt others by the dumb decisions that we make. He wants us to have a happy life. He wants us to have a good life here. Because there's too much said in the Bible about enjoying with the wife of your youth and knowing that he wants us to have that pleasure and to enjoy life and all that it has to offer. But you're not going to do it unless you control yourself. So young guys, you've got to get a handle on controlling your access to pornography. Do you know the statistics are unbelievable? They're not just unbelievable for your age. You know, all the way to my age. Guys that are over 45, 50, 60 are still using pornography online. I was in a class with a bunch of guys, and the fellow that was teaching that day, he just asked the question. He said, how many of y'all have seen, just guys that are in there, how many of y'all have seen the picture of a completely naked woman on your computer screen? And none of us raised our hand. He was asking, have you not done it? None of us raised our hand, including me. And I'm not going to ask you that question, but I know the answer. I know the answer because I know me. And I want you to know that we won't help you if we're not honest. that I struggled with the same thing you struggled with. But I can assure you of this. If you will fight that battle, you're going to fail. We're going to talk about in a minute. He says it. You need accountability. You're going to fail. But if you'll keep fighting, if you'll get up, if you'll say, I'm going to stop. If you've got to have professional help, because guys, there's some guys that are getting hooked as early as 8, 9, 10, 11. And when you get hooked that early, it's going to rewire your brain. One guy quit doing it because you know what he told me? He said, I read what happens to those women in the pornography industry. They're just things. That's all they are. They're just things to those guys that produce all of that filthy material. They're not human beings. They don't care what happens to them. And when they lose any beauty that's left, they will kick them out as fast as a New York minute. I quit because I couldn't believe I was watching. And that's what they're doing to those real people. You have to fight it. But if you'll fight it, I guarantee you the day's going to come that you won't want it. You won't want it for the right reason, that you want to love God and you want to help your brothers and sisters and you want to say to your wife, I don't want our marriage to end in a terrible divorce because I can't control this. You can control it. That's what the Bible says to us. The second thing he says is sexual immorality wrongs another, and we just talked about that. Notice he says it. No one transgresses and wrongs his brother in this matter because the Lord is an avenger in all these things. It's evident if two people commit adultery, they've harmed the other spouse in that relationship. We get it. But you harm a young lady, or a young lady, you harm a man, young man, if you decide to be sexually involved with them outside of marriage. And don't think that just because you're not committing fornication, don't think that just if you're just touching and all the things that go along with that, that's not sexual immorality. It is. Don't think that you can get away with some kind of semantics. You're committing something that's lascivious, licentious. There's other words in the Bible. And that's not what we're supposed to be. If God is Lord, if Jesus is Lord, then that's the first. Then I know when he says the things he's saying in this passage, he means business. Because the last thing he says is, I'll take care of it. I'm going to judge it. Therefore, whoever disregards this, disregards not man, but God. You hurt your parents if they find out. True enough. But listen to what he's saying. You're not hurting man. You're rejecting God. He expects us to live holy lives, lives that mirror his Son. All right, real quick. Seek to minimize your passions. Guys, we can't watch all the junk that's out there. You need VidAngel, whatever else, to clean up stuff. I'm not saying that the Bible has stories about people committing sexual immorality, right? I'm not trying to be prudish. It's not saying that, I'm talking about gratuitous. That you're watching something that, you might be watching a murder mystery, something, and they committed adultery, but they're not showing you anything. They're just making the fact known to you. The Bible doesn't do it gratuitously. It tells us what David did, but it's very innocuous in how it tells it, right? Sin is sin. Murder, lying, committing adultery. But that's not what Hollywood does. They know sex sells. And they're going to put it in a gratuitous way that arouses you, that gets you thinking and wanting to do the wrong thing. You have to decide to minimize that. I remember a friend of mine that was a preacher, he said, sometimes, folks, it's like the ads that come on. I mean, the ads that come on TV. This girl that just came on, Sweeney, is that her name? Have y'all seen that lately? And it I don't know. She, John Wayne is who I remember. Okay, that tells you how far back I go. But it shows this young lady, and she's pulling on jeans, and she talks about how her jeans, and she meant G-E-N-E-S, but they're playing on that. And she's pulling up her jeans, and she's laying down, and I don't have to go any further, in a way that if I'm a young guy, I'm not dead, young people, either. I get it. I understand what they're trying to do. And it does something to you. So you got to seek to minimize it. You got to set appropriate barriers. When I was in College Station, every now and then, there'd be a guy that would come up from, he'd already graduated, he came up to see his girlfriend, and yeah, she has roommates, but he slept at her house. Said he slept on the couch. I was like, I had him by both collars going, what is wrong with you? No, I didn't do that. Sometimes I feel like Nehemiah, that I need to beat and pull people's hair out. The point being is, how dangerous is that? You are really attracted to this girl. I mean, she is the best looking thing. And you can't even, you're really saying behind, what does she see in me? I say the same thing. I mean, I see the prettiest girls with the ugliest guys I've ever seen before, right? And you think something's not going to happen? Or you go to their apartment. You go to their apartment and you just happen to find their bedroom. You're in the bedroom with them. Listen, let me tell you something about bedrooms. Bedrooms are for your parents and sleep. Do you understand what I'm saying? They're not for anybody else. You see, you're going the wrong road. The thing, go read Proverbs 7. That boy, it said, he took the wrong road. He went to the wrong place. She found him, she was looking for him, and that's what I'm saying you will do if you're not setting appropriate barriers. You both sit on the couch watching a movie, and you got the covers across both of you, and I don't have to go any further, do I? Because of what can happen. You've got to set barriers. You have to care about modest clothing. I've been saying this for a while. I don't know what you think, Warren. We haven't talked about it, but I think we've lost that battle. I hate to say that. I'm about to put out a marriage paper that says, here are my stipulations for forming a marriage. And one of them is, we're going to dress modestly. You're not going to dress in something that you wouldn't wear to church on Sunday. The stuff I see in a marriage anymore is stuff that they would not wear on the Lord's Day. Well, at least I don't think they would. What's wrong with us? We have just given over into the world. There's a reason short shorts are called that. There's a reason. I've got pictures I sometimes show. I've had a couple of elders tell me, well, don't show that anymore. And I said, no, we need to show it. This kid is standing next to a young lady who has her dress cut so low. I mean, it wasn't super low, but it was still too low. And she's holding, and I don't even know if they're anyway Christian, but it's just, I found it. Put up there, and this kid, he's just looking all the way to China. Because you know why? God made guys to be attracted. There's a reason David went out on that roof and looked down on a very beautiful woman bathing and was so aroused that you know the rest of the story. How sordid what happened. Young ladies, I know I've been talking to you, and guys need to take this to effect too, but you are made that way, and God made you that way, and He made guys that way. And here's the thing I always ask, dads, where are you? Do y'all not remember what you were drawn to when you were 16? I mean, do you not remember what you looked at and what you were interested in? And somehow we just give it up. And we don't say to our young ladies, you're not wearing that. And you're not going to be in your wedding in that. We need to care again about modest apparel. And to be accountable to someone. We talked about that. I know young guys that are accountable. Right now, I have a young guy that I'm his accountability. And when he sees pornography, he tells me. And we talk about it. And he's getting better all the time. You need help. Get accountability with somebody. I know you can do some of it with your phones. In fact, I entered a code on a phone for a young guy when I was at College Station so that it would notify me if he ever went to those kind of sites. But be accountable so that you'll do the right thing. All right, that's my lesson. Any thoughts? Anything you want to share? Thank y'all for tuning in. And so how do I rate to Sam and Warren? Okay.
A lot more graphic. Good lesson. Good lesson. CC's Pizza, again, the church is not sponsoring.